We're sisters, best friends, and authors on a mission to help you stoke your creative fire and live the life of your dreams. We believe that purpose fuels passion and that creativity is your secret weapon for mass construction. There's never been a better time to bless the world with your dream realized. You're listening to The Kate and Abby Show. What's up, guys? Welcome back to The Kate and Abby Show. This is episode 17. Welcome back. We are going to be talking about more of a lifestyle-ish topic today, but also incorporating the writing process, creative process, and just being a creative entrepreneur in general. And yeah, I'm excited to get into it. So we're going to be talking about the importance of taking breaks and finding your inspiration and being open to inspiration.
Yeah, because as I like to say here on my channel, if you're watching on YouTube, you're on my YouTube channel, but otherwise on my YouTube channel and on my blog and everywhere else, I always talk about, and me and Abby have had huge discussions about the fact that how you live every other area of your life is going to affect your creativity. It's going to affect your overall happiness. Happiness has to come first. We talk about this concept all the time. I actually just recently wrote a blog post about it over on my blog, Here to Create blog. I think it's called Unplugging to Find Connection or something like that. If you want to check it out, feel free. But basically, I talked about what we're going to be talking about today is the fact that you can't just work all the time, even if you enjoy working, and expect to always feel inspired and uplifted and ready to create. That you actually have to be tending to taking care of yourself, body, mind, and spirit in every other area of your life in order to foster that creativity that's going to spill over into a book or into a film or into whatever type of project you're working on. You have to be fostering that in other areas of your life. So I jotted down on this notebook over here, the taking a break lifestyle, because we're not just talking about, go on a vacation once a year and get away from your work. We're talking about incorporating this into your lifestyle so that you are constantly, consciously, and intentionally living. And by that, I mean paying attention and becoming aware of your work ethic. Are you working like every single day without ever stopping? And is that becoming a toxic loop that's actually causing you to feel feelings of burnout, etc.? I think a lot of that comes from not giving ourselves a break.
Yeah.
So that's what we're delving into today is how can we analyze our work ethic and get better about this?
Yeah. So what are some things that you physically implement or have to remind yourself to implement either every week or every month or every day even to kind of reconnect with that inspiration?
Well, for me, I feel like I fall into the trap often of feeling like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. And that idea comes from, in my opinion, culture and society and this hustle concept. Not that there's anything wrong with getting things done. And so if you're using the word hustle to describe you avidly working towards something, that's fine. But it has sort of there's a general atmosphere around it of this like work, and that your whole life's wrapped up in that when it should not be. So I try to first of all become aware of what am I actually doing? Is it making a difference? Is it making an impact? Am I getting the things that I need to get done? And then am I adding things on top of that are superfluous, and I'm giving myself like false deadlines, artificially imposed, self-imposed deadlines for, I need to do all this stuff, but I don't really. And I think entrepreneurs especially struggle with this because they don't have they're their own boss. As an entrepreneur, you're your own boss. You have to figure this stuff out for yourself, because you don't just have a work assignment and then when you're done, you're done. You can always push that barrier out further and further and further so that you're never done working. So I think the first step in breaking that cycle is becoming aware of whether or not you're doing that. And taking a step back to see, am I doing that? Am I getting to the point where I am accomplishing the things I need to get done? But beyond that, I keep pushing this barrier further and further and further out. And so I'm always working. I'm always in front of my computer. I'm eating meals in front of my computer.
Yeah. And that's really like a process of self-observation and self-discovery. One of the things that I find really helpful for self-discovery and kind of pulling back and observing what you're doing and how you're feeling is to journal. And I almost exclusively use that for self-observation, because it is incredibly hard for me to like even look at what I'm doing or what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling. Like I can't even really recognize it until I write it down. It's kind of weird. But once I write it down and I start writing, if I write several days in a row, or I feel like journaling, whenever I feel like journaling, I start journaling. And by journal, I mean, I don't think really clearly about what I'm going to write before I write it. I just write and like kind of brain dump, usually like set a timer for 15 minutes and just, I'm going to write for 15 minutes. And when the timer rings, I'm done. And I'm just going to brain dump exactly how I feel right now. And
that's an interesting idea to do the timer.
Yeah. And because it kind of just keeps you writing. Like, don't stop to ruminate on anything that you've been writing. Like, just write. And that's what I usually do is I immediately close the notebook and walk away. I don't sit there ruminate on what I've just written. I come back later, and when I'm in more of a objective frame of mind, look at the previous entries and see what they have in common and see what's coming up. If something's coming up over and over again of like, I feel like I don't have any time. I feel like I never have time to do what I love to do. I feel like I never have free time. I feel drained. I feel uninspired, burnt out, whatever. Just paying attention to the words that you use to describe your own feelings and your own thoughts is, I think, a really good way to observe yourself and understand what's going on, and then take steps to figure out what you need to do to fix that.
Yeah, absolutely. Self-observation is so important. Journaling's a cool idea to get into that groove if you're into like, hey, I love writing, and maybe you already journal. That's a cool idea. Yeah, I think, and whatever gets you to pull back and look at what it is you're doing exactly. Because we're not very self-aware creatures. Sometimes we get stuck into habits that we don't even realize we have. And yeah, if you can pull back and look at that and recognize what those cycles are. If you have trouble doing that, ask someone who's close to you. Ask, a friend or a parent or a spouse. Ask someone who's close to you. Ask someone you work with every day. Hey, am I obsessive about work, or, do I work too much? What would you call my work ethic? How would you describe it to me? And just see what they say. Let them give you some honest feedback. And if you feel like you can't identify anything you're doing because you're like, oh, I'm so ingrained into doing, X, Y, Z, maybe hearing it from someone else would be helpful. And then I think once you've identified, like, yeah, I'm not giving myself any days off. I'm not giving myself time to do things I love. Like you were saying, if you always feel like I don't have enough time, especially as an entrepreneur, you need to figure out, okay, well, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because you need to be giving yourself time to become inspired. You can't pour out of an empty cup. If you're trying to create something, whether it's books or videos or films or programs that are going to inspire or encourage anyone in any way, you need to be writing it and creating it from a place where you are inspired, or else no one's going to feel that inspiration if you're not even inspired when you're making it. So what inspires you? And I think identify what some of those things are. They're different for everyone. For me, a big, huge inspiration is going out into nature. And I think that is actually something that, like, I have a lot of broader views on nature and how I think everyone is connected to nature. So even if you're not someone who would consider yourself an outdoorsy person, I think it can be extremely helpful. Abby raises her hand. It can be really helpful to identify, like, what are some things that I could do outside, even if it's sitting in your yard and having a cup of tea, or if it's going for a walk in a park. Being outside is something we were designed to do. We're connected to the earth. There's so many benefits to getting outside, even for a little while, breathing fresh air, experiencing the negative ions from plants. It's full of good vibes. Highly recommend it. And try not to be on a phone or on a device while out in nature. Let it be the barrier that disconnects you and puts you into this really realm of what is actually real. So you have plants and life around you. You have all this good energy. You don't have the like toxic vibes of social media and constant visual and acoustic clutter. Try to get as far away from that as possible and just give yourself time to breathe, like literally breathe and figuratively breathe. We shouldn't have this constant information input. That's my personal opinion. I don't think it's healthy. I think it's something that has only occurred in modern times, probably the past, not even like 50 years or so, not even like less than that.
Yeah.
The past probably 25 years, I would say.
Yeah, with like the internet.
Yeah.
25 years, I think.
Right. So exactly. So the past 25 years, we've had this like being inundated with constant updates about not only the news and events, but also every single person, that whether we know them or not. And it doesn't seem normal to have so much information input. I don't think that it's healthy. That's just my personal view. So try to distance yourself from that and get around nature. Go on a hike, go climbing, go, surfing, be on the beach, go for a walk, go for a jog. Do something that gets you out into fresh air and give yourself time to think.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely so many benefits from that. I think a thing that may pop up in people's heads as they're listening to this and as they've thought about this in the past is like, oh, I'd love to do all those things, but I don't have time to do them. I'm too busy to do them.
Right.
To which I would recommend revolutionizing the way you look at time and the way you schedule your life. So I'm super into time management and productivity. It's something I really dig. But I've really gotten into, over the past few years, gotten into calendar blocking. And of course, you hear me talk about calendar blocking a lot. But what I love so much about calendar blocking is that you can see how much time you really have in a day once you put in the things that actually need to happen in a day. And I know you mentioned that when you're an entrepreneur, you're working from home, you're working for yourself, you tend to take on more than you need to. And so we often look at our to-do lists, or we write up our to-do lists as like, well, I want to do all these things. I have to do all these things eventually. So I have time. Let's just do the things. And then you pencil in all this stuff and you don't really give yourself any time off. And as long as you always have things to do, those things will always be sliding into your schedule and taking up the time that you may need to regain inspiration and to go outside and do these things and breathe and gather your inspiration and just find new ideas, explore and be more creative. So Something that I would highly recommend is looking at what things really need to get done and are urgent. Like there are important things that you need to do every day that are urgent, that are time sensitive, that you need to get done. But beyond that, there are really, most of the things you do all day are not time sensitive or urgent.
Exactly.
They may be important, but they might not be like, I have to do this or else there will be real consequences tomorrow. That's really the question that I ask myself now.
Right.
Like, if I don't do this, will there be real consequences tomorrow?
Right. And like 99% of the time, at least for me, is no.
Yeah. And I'm not like advocating procrastination. I'm just saying that there are some things you need to get done today and then some things that could wait. And to pile on all the tasks can sometimes be more of a burden and it can do more harm than good because you are draining yourself and burning yourself out. And then you're not giving yourself time to gather the energy that you need to propel you through those tasks. So I think it's also important to think about how you need energy for the things that you do. So gathering the energy is important, just as important as feeding yourself or sleeping. We look at those as essential things.
Yeah.
So time off should be essential as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Because you need to give your mind a break from whatever it is you're doing. Like going and going and going and going is like the perfect recipe for getting burnt out. And I've talked to so many writers who have asked me about burnout as a creative writer, and they'll describe to me like what they're doing, and I'm like, this is why you feel this way, because you can't just go and go and go and go and not stop at all and expect to constantly stay full of creativity and inspiration and zest for what you're working on. You need to take a break and identify, what are the things that make me feel happy? And that's really very simple. Things that make you feel fundamentally happy and fulfilled, and really identifying from a spiritual whatever that means to you, perspective of what is healthily making you happy is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Things that are good for you, that make you happy. And I think that's what true happiness is what's building you up, mind, body, and spirit.
And you can really feel the difference.
Yeah.
Like it gives you energy, it gives you life, and it makes you want to go do great things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So what I was
positive energy. It gives you positive energy.
Right. So I was kind of trying to mitigate there, like, what makes me happy is, laying around all day watching Netflix and eating 3 containers of ice cream. Well, yeah and no, it doesn't really make you fundamentally happy, though. It just gives you a boost of dopamine for a very temporary period of time. So we're not talking about that kind of happiness. I mean, like, what are the things that fundamentally make you happy? Like being outdoors, maybe, or maybe it's, a certain type of like activity that you love doing, like, climbing or ice skating or playing tennis. It's something like that. That's like something that is completely out of your workspace, that you just love the joy of doing this thing.
I think another distinction there, a very subtle difference, is, as you were saying that, it occurred to me, is that with one thing, you are kind of numbing and distracting yourself from life.
Yeah.
And then in the other instance, you're being very engaged with life.
Right, that's a great
So, like,
point.
getting out in nature, hiking, surfing, skating, whatever you're doing, or even spending time with loved ones, that's very engaging with life.
Yeah.
Versus, treating yourself to comfort foods and TV all day is kind of retreating from life.
Exactly.
It's kind of how I see it on more of like an emotional level.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like trying to distract yourself from something.
Exactly.
And it's not gonna give you the same boost of energy and lasting inspiration.
Yeah. For sure. It's a totally different vibe.
You want to reconnect with life.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just thinking about that earlier, like when I've heard a lot of people say, I'm unplugging from the internet and social media. Which is great. I'm all for that. I talk about that a lot, going off grid. And when I talk about going off grid, I'm not talking about this sense of, there's a couple different ways to look at off grid. The old fashioned version was that you're living somewhere off the electrical grid and you're somehow producing your own energy. Nowadays, it's often referred to in the sense that you're unplugging from all the typical day-to-day stuff. You're probably going camping maybe, and you're not going to be on digital devices. So that's a great thing to do if you can do that. But the thing is it's not just about unplugging from something. It's about connecting to something else, like you were just saying. Don't just unplug and be in an absence of a thing that you found was getting toxic.
Yeah, exactly.
Or too much or tiring.
It's like being a vegetarian or a vegan, and then like all you do is just buy things that don't have meat or dairy in them.
Chips don't have meat in them.
It's like, I'm a vegan now. I'm just eating chips and chips.
And I'm just gonna buy highly processed vegetarian foods.
Like it may be eliminating the things that you didn't want to be putting in your body,
right?
But it's not necessarily adding anything good to your life.
Yeah. Like, I remember way back in the day doing, like, this was when I was, like, a young teenager, doing the raw till 4 diet. And I'm like, oh, cool, you know, I'm going to eat raw foods till 4 o'clock. And I would just be like, well, I don't really like any raw foods, though. So I'm just going to have this banana and another banana, and I'm going to wait till 4, and then I'm just going to eat as much food as I want. And it's like, it defeats the whole purpose.
Right.
It defeats the whole purpose, because what it was supposed to do was prompt you to try a lot of new raw foods. Not just
and
like,
not starve
let's
yourself.
starve ourselves and just eat a
Right.
couple of things we can barely tolerate till we can eat cooked food again.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing.
Yeah, I feel like that's how people treat like hiatus from the internet.
Yeah.
Is like, well, I'll just starve myself of it
Exactly.
and not do anything else, and just can't wait till I can get back onto the grid or back onto the internet, back onto social media. Can't wait to re-download the Instagram app.
Yeah.
And it's like, are you doing anything constructive in the time that
Right.
you're away from Instagram?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
that's
And the thing is,
important.
I believe if you do it properly, it becomes a permanent lifestyle, not just a once in a while thing.
Yeah.
And it's different for everyone. So when I talk about me, I'm not necessarily saying like this is the one size fits all. But like for me personally, I do not have any social media apps at all. I manage all my social media from Planoly on my laptop in a really mindful way. And to check up on friends, to communicate with friends, I always do that via messaging them or emailing them or calling them personally. And I think there's just a lot to be gained by having that more personal interaction rather than just scrolling through a cluttered feed and maybe you'll see what your friend's having for lunch. That's not very personal. You know what I mean? Not that there's anything wrong with visiting their social media pages. I do that sometimes and by going to the exact page, so I'm never looking at a feed. But I don't have those apps. I'm really mindful with how I go about it. And I've actually, the past couple of months, started living without a phone, which it is, I'm not saying that I don't own a phone because I do, but
Which is really annoying when I'm trying to call her. And she's like, oh, my phone, I haven't turned on my phone in 3 days.
Yeah, well, my rule, and this is a little more extreme, but I work in a space that has a landline. So everyone who needs to get in touch with me always knows that number and they can always reach me. And I sporadically check messenger.com where I just get my curated messages, not any of the other news feed. So that's how people can get in touch with me. And I keep my cell phone charged and off and there to be used as an actual phone when I go out, and if someone needs to get in touch with me, then I have a mobile phone. Wow, that's kind of like what it was designed for. Now, as I said, I mean, that's kind of like more of I don't know. I mean, it doesn't feel that extreme to me at all, but I think to some people that might seem a little bit more extreme.
I think a lot of people don't have landlines anymore.
Yeah, that's probably true. So if you're someone who doesn't have a landline, that's not applicable to you.
But
then.
I know I barely use my phone, and I just keep it in the other room. Like it's never next to me when I'm writing or working or anything, and I use it for certain apps like recording audio and stuff like that. So I like to have it as a tool. But yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like using it, right? Using it as a tool, like you said.
Yeah.
And not. I think a lot of people don't think of it as that.
Yeah.
They think of it as like a source of entertainment.
Yeah, it's like no, this is like a great device that you can check your security cameras and record audio and do important stuff on.
Yeah,
it's an important tool for important stuff. Period.
Right. Exactly.
And for some social media work, but yeah, very rarely do I actually use like the social media apps and stuff, which actually we did a whole episode on digital minimalism, which it is kind of goes hand in hand with what we're talking about here. And that's the first episode of the podcast that we ever made. Definitely go back and check that one out because I think you'd like it if you like this episode. One other thing I wanted to touch on is something that I've been sort of changing in my lifestyle lately, which ties into what we're talking about here. And that is really exploring and embracing the lifestyle of being a self-employed person and giving myself a little bit more creative freedom as to what I work on. So for my work, I have a lot of different things that I get to do. And I am very much I very much have like this default mindset of figuring out like what I should be doing and then like penciling it into my schedule and going, going really hustling on that when I really don't have to do that. So I've been taking more of a different approach from it lately, over the past few weeks of like, what would I like to do? What would I feel inspired to do today? What do I feel inspired to do and work on today? So if that happens to be, as long as there's no like deadline project, like, oh, I have to get a video up tomorrow and it's not ready, then I'll obviously work on that. But if it's something that I could do a multitude of things today, I'm not always going to pick the one that is the most businessy one, for lack of a better word. Like I am going to I have been letting my inspiration guide me more. Like let your inspiration sort of call the shots of like, you could do, a bunch of different things. What do you most feel inspired to work on? And I think that it's a really good way to get into flow or just a state of inspired creation because you're letting your energy go where it wants to, sort of.
Yeah.
Rather than forcing it in one direction.
Yeah.
And I often find that when I let that happen, when I let my inspiration just take me where it wants to go, I end up creating so much better and losing track of time and really getting into flow and really just like doing a really excellent job on whatever it is, whether it's working on a video or writing my book or doing some other thing. It really propels me into really inspired creation. Right. And that's something that can't be forced.
Absolutely. I think that because you're becoming fully present in that moment with that one thing and not trying to do multiple things at once or having things in the background, playing in the background.
Yeah, because it's almost like you're fighting your inspiration otherwise. You're like, your inspiration is like, I want to do this, but you're like, no, we have to do this.
Right.
And it can be like, it can feel like a struggle then.
Exactly. Yeah.
It shouldn't be a struggle.
No, it should not be a struggle. It should be something that's joy-filled. And I think like my last thought is that try to have one day a week where you are not working on anything and just take a break. Have a rest day where you go and do something that you love, something that brings you joy and fulfillment and helps you to reset. I think that's so important if you can choose one day a week and have that break, have that breather. And that's what's going to fuel your coming week of working on your creative projects.
Yeah, 100%.
So to recap, give yourself a break and try to pull back and look at what your work ethic is like. Even have someone help you do that. Kind of take stock of what it is you're doing and give yourself time to go into nature and recharge or just do something you love.
Yeah.
And fill the cup.
Yeah, for sure. It's so important. Definitely a lifestyle thing, like you said at the beginning. It's a taking a break lifestyle.
Exactly. It's a lifestyle. So absolutely tell us below in the comments what you thought of this episode, what you do for your own personal self-care. If you're watching on YouTube, we'd love to hear from you. If not, send us a message if you're listening. Check out Abby's YouTube channel. It is
youtube.com/Abby Emmons.
And if you want to check out my YouTube channel, if you're listening, it's youtube.com/KEmmons. Be sure to check out our Patreon, patreon.com/The Kate and Abby Show if you'd like to support the show. The best way to support us, though, is by sharing the episode with someone who you think it would inspire. We so appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you stay stoked.
And rock on.